Welcome to the next in the Rockstar Diamond video series. Today we're going to tackle a real challenge. We're going to work on engineered stone. We're going to do a surface repair. One of the most difficult things in countertop repairs. Natural stone like granite is perfectly flat. It's still difficult, and guys that can do scratch repairs are artists. But engineered stone, because of the way that it's manufactured, has its own special set of circumstances. When the slabs are being manufactured, there's a lot of pressure, a lot of water, and big diamonds. And because engineered stone is 93% quartz and 7% polyester resin, what happens is as it's being polished, the resin, being softer than the quartz, gets knocked down just ever so slightly, and it gives it a alligator peel or orange peel, snake skin, whatever you want to call it, finish. And so when we do our repair, we're going to break this piece into 3 stages. We're going to make scratches all the way across. We're going to leave 1/3 as our control with the scratches. The next 2/3, we're going to polish those scratches out, and what you'll see is a slick spot. It's incongruent with the texture of the rest of the stone. The scratch is gone, the shine's there, the color's there, but it just doesn't match. And so in our 3rd section, we're going to use the Rockstar Quartz Repair compounds, 1, 2, 3, and 4 pads, to put that alligator skin back on and give it back the factory look that until recently we were told could never be done. So to get this thing started, I'm going to take a 200 grit diamond pad, just raw diamonds, and I'm going to rough up this surface from one side to the other. So we've put in some really heavy scratches, probably way beyond what the average fabricator would run into in this situation, but we want to show that even an extreme scratch can be taken out and dealt with. Okay, so now we're going to tackle the scratch repair part, taking out the scratches, and I've tried to make it a little bit easier for you guys to watch in building a clear dam. Normally what I do on a job site is I'll just take a big beach towel and roll it up and wrap it around. Engineered stone does have to be polished wet, whether you're doing an edge or doing the surface. Because it has resin as the binder holding the quartz together, it will burn. So this all has to be done wet. So I've created a water dam, but hopefully it's clear enough that you can see what we're doing. Now there's 2 different styles of pads that you can use to take the scratch out. You have the hard resin discs, and then we also have soft resin pads on a hard back plate. And I'm going to do it today with the soft pads on a hard back plate. We're going to use the Rockstar Premium wet pads. Notice that they're white in color. Sometimes some pads that have a dark resin can bleed into the stone. So these pads work really well on engineered stone. And I'm also going to replicate what might happen in the field, I'm going to use just a plain Makita 9565 variable speed grinder. Every repair guy, every installer has one of these where they may not have a water feed type grinder polisher. They may not have the ability to use it. So what we're trying to replicate here is what could actually happen in the field, in a person's house, on a countertop that's already been installed. I'm going to take a China marker and I'm going to make rings around my scratches here. Because if all I do is focus on the scratched area, I'm going to have a trough, and when this thing hits light, it's going to stand out like a sore thumb. So what we've got to do is we've got to blend it out. So I'm going to make my rings about 1 inch apart for every grit that I'm going to do. This also shows me where I've been and where I've got to get to. You always want to start with the least invasive pad possible. In a perfect world we could start with a 3000, but since these scratches are deep enough that I can feel them with my fingernail, I know that I'm going to have to start pretty low. I'm going to start with a 200 grit pad and then work my way up. I'm going to set my Makita on its slowest possible speed. I'd like to go even slower, but since this is the tool that's most often with an installer or repair guy, this is what we're going to use. Important to keep the water in the area and keep the pad cool. Also notice I start with my pad down. I don't want to have it spinning and then set it down, because it'd be impossible to set perfectly flat. And then what's going to happen is I'm going to leave rings that I might even have to go even deeper with a more aggressive pad to get those out. So we start with the pad down. So you can see how far back we've sanded that by how light the stone is. Now if you aren't sure if you've gotten them all or not, what you want to do is find a large clear crystal and look just at that one crystal and see if the scratches are still there. Looks to me like we've gotten to the bottom of that. So I'm going to clean off the 200 grit swarf residue, because I don't want that to cloudy up and diminish my next grit, which will be 400. Again, starting with the pad down, it's real important that you try to feel through your hands that you're making even contact with the whole pad. You don't want to tilt one way or the other, or you're going to have waves and dips, and then that's going to stand out and ruin the repair. Next we're doing 800 grit. We should start to see more color. The clarity is fairly good here, but you can see the color is way off. 800, we should start seeing that color coming out, getting deeper, a darker gray on this particular material. Okay, now it's time to get to the meat and potatoes of the video here, the Rockstar Surface Restoration Kit. We took our scratches out in this middle section. Remember, section 1 was where we left the scratches alone. That was our control. Here we used 200, 400, 800, 1500 grit and worked it so that we spread it out so there's no dips, no waves. And now we're going to tape off section 2, and section 3 is going to be where we use the 4 Rockstar compounds. Compound number 1, compound number 2, and compound number 4, we're going to use these wool pads. These came from the automotive world, but they work really nicely here. And then for number 3, we're going to use a felt pad, a harder disc. Number 1 is going to knock that resin down. And before we leave number 1, we should really be where we want to be as far as the texture. Number 2, a little bit more. Then 3 and 4 are going to put that shine back on the quartz, give it a little bit more color, and when we get done, it's going to be just like factory. We're going to start with compound number 1 and the number 1 pad. Really important, these compounds settle, so it's really important to shake them up real good. Okay, I'm going to put down about the size of a silver dollar. Okay, and very important that you work it as evenly as you can. Keep track of where you've been and where you need to go. Again, lowest setting, 2800 RPMs. I can already see it coming out. I'm going to add a little bit more to my edge here. Don't be afraid to use the edge either, to dig a little bit. But do be aware that when you feel friction, that's heat. So by using the edge, it also lessens the friction. One thing that's real important is that we remove all of number 1 compound before going to number 2. And then it's important to remove all of number 2 before going to number 3. We don't want any of those other compounds contaminating, because it'll just take us backwards. Some people like to use acetone in between. I don't. I'm afraid that I might get some on the cabinets, potentially ruin the cabinets. So I either use denatured alcohol or just water. Okay, so what I'm doing, I'm just stepping back and I'm looking, trying to catch a light. And then I follow that light across to make sure that I have that skin, that texture. This is looking pretty good. Okay, now we're ready to start with number 2. Again, make sure you shake it up, because it will settle. And make sure that you're using your number 2 pad and you don't have any more number 1 or any other of the compounds in it. This one's a little bit more watery. Time to start number 3. This time we're going to use a felt pad. And the number 3 compound, and this one is actually powder. So go yay. Add just enough to make a paste. Number 3 is the messy one. Now this one I'll also be using more water in that I won't be able to tilt up and use the edge as much. So this one might get a little A little soupy and a little messy. But what this one does is it really pops the quartz. It'll give it depth. You'll be able to see all the way down to the bottom of the quartz piece. So make sure we're on number 1. Here we go. Okay, we're ready for our last step, number 4. Number 4 pad, number 4 compound. This last step puts that final bling. Also brings out that last bit of color. Looks good.
Yay.
Okay, so to wrap it up, we took our piece of engineered stone to mimic a kitchen countertop. We took diamond sandpaper and really roughed up the surface to mimic the repair. We left part 1 alone, that's our control with the scratches obvious on it. On part 2 and 3 here, we used the Rockstar premium wet pads, 200, 400, 800, 1500, and 3000 grit on an aluminum backer. We took out the scratches, then we feathered it out. And then we left number 2 alone. Number 3, we used the Rockstar Quartz Surface Restoration Kit, compounds 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, and 4, we used a wool bonnet. Number 3, we used a felt pad. 1 and 2, knocked the resin down, gave it that alligator skin, that orange peel texture. And then number 3 and 4 brought out the color and the clarity and brought it back to a factory finish. Now I know that there are other systems out there, but to my mind this is the most user-friendly, easiest system that there is. So I'm Adam Tompkins, this is Rockstar Diamond. I hope this helps you out. Have a good night.